The popular image of caveman society paints women as helpless figures cowering in caves while men dragged them around by their hair. But archaeological evidence reveals a completely different story, one where women wielded power in ways that would fundamentally reshape how we understand prehistoric society. The reality begins with a simple fact that changes everything. In hunter-gatherer societies, which made up virtually all human communities for tens of thousands of years, women provided between 60 to 80% of the calories consumed by their groups. While men pursued large game animals in dramatic hunts that could last days and often returned empty-handed, women engaged in gathering activities that formed the reliable foundation of survival. But here's where it gets interesting. These weren't just women picking berries. Archaeological sites across Europe, Africa, and Asia reveal sophisticated toolkits specifically designed for women's work. Digging sticks with carefully carved handles, weighted down with perforated stones to increase efficiency. Intricate baskets woven with mathematical precision to maximize carrying capacity. Grinding stones shaped and sized for different types of seeds and nuts, each optimized for specific plants. The expertise required for this work was staggering. A successful gatherer needed to identify hundreds of plant species, know their seasonal availability, understand which parts were edible and which were poisonous, and master the complex processing techniques that made many plants digestible. Some tubers required days of preparation, involving grinding, soaking, and cooking in specific sequences to remove toxins. This knowledge created something unexpected: female economic power. In societies where women controlled the majority of food production, they also controlled food distribution. Ethnographic studies of surviving hunter-gatherer groups reveal that senior women often decided who ate first during times of scarcity, which families received surplus food, and how resources were allocated during seasonal shortages. But the influence extended far beyond food. Recent discoveries at burial sites dating back 40,000 years show women interred with elaborate jewelry, specialized tools, and imported materials from hundreds of miles away. At Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, archaeologists uncovered the grave of a woman buried with carved ivory artifacts and red ochre materials that required extensive trade networks to obtain. The ochre reveals another dimension of women's roles. Chemical analysis of cave paintings across multiple continents shows that many were created using ochre prepared with techniques that matched those found in women's burial sites. The hands stenciled on cave walls in places like Cueva de las Manos in Argentina show a predominance of female hand sizes, suggesting women played central roles in the artistic and possibly spiritual practices of their communities. Speaking of spiritual practices, the archaeological record presents a fascinating pattern. The earliest known religious artifacts, Venus figurines, dating back 30,000 years, depict women with exaggerated feminine features. These weren't crude carvings, but sophisticated sculptures requiring advanced artistic skill. Their widespread distribution across Europe suggests shared cultural practices centered around feminine symbolism. The burial evidence supports this pattern. At Sungir in Russia, a site dating back 34,000 years, a woman was buried with over 3,000 ivory beads, each requiring hours to carve and polish. The mathematical precision of the bead arrangement suggests ritualistic significance, indicating women held important ceremonial roles in their communities. But perhaps the most surprising aspect of women's lives in prehistoric times was their mobility. Contrary to images of women confined to cave hearths, isotope analysis of ancient teeth reveals extensive travel patterns. Women moved between communities regularly, creating networks that spanned hundreds of miles. This movement wasn't random, it appears to have been systematic, suggesting organized social structures. These networks served multiple functions. They facilitated the exchange of genetic material between groups, preventing inbreeding. They enabled the sharing of technological innovations, new tool designs, food processing techniques, and artistic styles spread along routes that archaeological evidence suggests were primarily maintained by women. The social implications were profound. In societies where survival depended on cooperation, women's role as network maintainers gave them significant political influence. Decisions about where to establish seasonal camps, which groups to trade with, and how to resolve conflicts between communities often involved women's input because they possessed crucial information about distant groups and their resources. The physical demands of prehistoric life created another unexpected dynamic. Skeletal remains show that both men and women in hunter-gatherer societies had bone density and muscle attachment sites that rival those of modern athletes. But women's remains show specific adaptations related to carrying heavy loads over long distances. Their hip and spine structures evolved to support the regular transport of gathered resources, children, and household goods during seasonal migrations. These migrations reveal the complexity of prehistoric family structures. Rather than the nuclear family units often depicted in popular culture, archaeological evidence suggests extended kinship networks where multiple generations of women work together. Children were raised communally, with knowledge passed down through female lineages that specialized in different aspects of survival. The medical knowledge held by women was particularly sophisticated. Analysis of plant remains at ancient campsites shows evidence of medicinal plants that required specific harvesting times and preparation methods. Skeletal remains show evidence of successful bone setting, dental procedures, and even trepanation, surgical removal of skull fragments, with survival rates suggesting advanced medical understanding. What emerges from this evidence is a picture of prehistoric women as skilled professionals, political actors, spiritual leaders, and the architects of the social networks that held early human communities together. They weren't simply surviving, they were innovating, creating the technological and social foundations that would eventually enable the development of agriculture and permanent settlements. The transition to agricultural societies, which began around 12,000 years ago, would dramatically alter these power dynamics. But during the vast majority of human existence, women's expertise in gathering, processing, and distributing resources made them central figures in the daily survival and long-term success of their communities. This wasn't a world of gender equality as understood in contemporary terms, but it was a world where women's specialized knowledge and skills were essential for group survival, creating forms of authority and influence that shaped the fundamental patterns of early human society.